Happy September, everyone, as we close out September and head into the official fall season here. Welcome to this month's version of This Month in Cybersecurity. As we do every month, we kind of always try to frame our conversation. So with the NIST cybersecurity framework, which kind of helps us discuss security, which can be a kind of a wide-ranging topic, but we try to, put solutions and thoughts with regards to the 5 buckets that are represented here. And this diagram kind of gives way each month. We always give way to this diagram, which might be a little bit of an oversimplification, but this is a great reminder that 3 things I like to take away from this thing. A, if you look, it's equally balanced between prevention and reaction. This is something that most organization security budgets don't reflect that. They put a lot of money into the protect bucket. They often don't even identify their data as to what's the risky stuff necessarily, and they certainly underspend on things like response and recovery. So that's one area to take away. We like the fact that detection is right at the heart of things here as a very central theme. So all the consoles, who's looking at them, who's taking response and reaction to those things that you're detecting. And then obviously the whole idea of identifying the data in the beginning. So with cybersecurity framework in mind, let's go take a look at what's been newsworthy this past month that's occurred as we scour the security stories from various trade rags. One is obviously the Hurricane Florence. I think topped the news in general, and initially this would not seem like a security story, but more of a human nature or disaster type story with all the flooding, and everyone's seen that map and image. And those that are in the southeast corner of the United States are kind of tired of that, right? And they're happy to be on the recovery, but unfortunately, really, some of the storms are just brewing now, and those are some of the cyber story brewings. So we'll chat a little bit more about that in an ongoing story. We also like to talk about lookalike domains. Okay, if you kind of looked at this list quickly, or even looked at your own website quickly, you kind of miss some of the iterations that might occur and can occur to make them suddenly illegitimate. Even a trained eye could certainly miss some of the items that are noted on the screen. So we're going to look at that. Busy people can't be 100% of the time. So what do you do when someone's essentially taking advantage of lookalike domains? We're also going to talk about our good old mobile providers. The mobile giants have gathered together. This would be T-Mobile, AT&T, Verizon, and Sprint, 4 largest providers, and they've got a goal, and that goal is to be your identity provider. We'll kind of talk about the good and bad of that. We're also going to talk about, the topic is certainly much bigger than this graphic illustrates. We're going to talk about end of life for some products. Almost every month it seems we've been talking about patching, and just as part of the patching discussion, we're just going to talk about end of life. One that certainly is getting some attention now is the January 14th, 2020 for the end of life for Windows 7. A fully 44% of organizations' desktops are still running Windows 7. So in 15 months, or 14 months now, patching is no longer going to be available for them, and security patches can run wild. So we're going to kind of talk about end of life, and again, not just focus on Windows 7, but on a slew of other products for which we keep track of a number of spreadsheets. So we'll put some notables on screen and so forth. And I've got a couple other notable stories in there too. All right. So Hurricane Florence, in general, obviously, the storms have come and gone. Flooding continues. There's still, a bit of a human catastrophe. But if you were to see a site like this, a lot of people feel a sense of yearning to provide monies for things like that. So we're starting to see a lot of sites like this pop up. And if you were to hit a site like this, would you be tempted to donate? Well, the answer is if you click the donate now, you'll be directed to a PayPal page where you'll provide money, claiming in this particular case that 80% of all the donations go to first responders in North and South Carolina. This is on Facebook, it's on Twitter and other social networks, and literally this site didn't exist a while ago. Well, it couldn't have, because if Hurricane Florence, didn't exist earlier. So you have to be a little mindful of these sites, however. In the upper left-hand corner, you see it says Hurricane Florence ReliefFund.com. It all looks good. It all looks legitimate, but indeed, it's an anonymous registration from a web page. There's the PayPal account is unknown as to where it goes, and this is not a monitored charity under many of the what we'll call the Better Business Bureaus for the for giving, GuideStar, Wise Giving Alliance, Charity Watch, others that basically evaluate the dollars of this. So I guess at this time of year and when disasters come, it's good to be mindful of this, and also keep in mind that a lot of these also get promoted through phishing campaigns, right? This is a great opportunity for them to, tug on heartstrings and get people to click on links. So it's a cruel but a good time potentially to think about doing a test, right? For yourself. We've done this, I don't know, when people are changing web pages or providers, or there's something compelling happening at your organization. Sometimes it's a good time to do a phishing test around something like a Hurricane Florence based email. And so our organization has a capability to do a free phishing test for your organization. Send it in. We've got a number of templates we work from, including Hurricane Florence if desired, and send that in and kind of see how your organization does. So just wanted to give that some thought. And also be mindful of the fact that all of these site legitimacy. And speaking of that, I guess let's take a look at lookalike domains. Again, with the legitimate.corp can be altered in many different ways to, be an illegitimate. And essentially what's happening here is even recognized companies, right, like Microsoft or your ADPs of the world, people will oftentimes manipulate Microsoft to be micro, and the O is a zero, something like that, soft.com. They'll basically register those domains and then send out a bunch of phishing type campaigns, and then ultimately that site is shut down, right? So those happen and have happened in the past with regards to Microsoft and ADP. I want to let you know that even our organization, Peters, this goes back maybe a month ago, we had Peters, PETERSS.com, was suddenly registered, emails were sent in particular at one of our customers. Someone had been using a business email compromise, something we've been chatting about for several months now, and I think we'll touch on it today. They used Peters with an S, extra S, to send to one of our customers and request payment of an invoice. They apparently had been monitoring one of our customers' email boxes, saw that we had legitimate interactions at peters.com, and chose to essentially spoof and make a lookalike domain at Peters with an S, extra S, and try to solicit money out of them. That provided us to send out warning messages to all of our customers with regards to only interacting at peters.com, certain email addresses and sites. But be careful, be mindful, I guess, of those domains. Most recently, there's a story about KnowBe4. KnowBe4 is a training company that actually trains people to recognize things like lookalike domains, and even their website. An email was sent out with a, "Hey, look at our new, get this button from us," and it had a link there, which was being spoofed on a lookalike domain from KnowBe4. So these things happen, and I guess let's talk about what you can do. So first of all, from a risk profile perspective, we have the capability to look at domains that look like yours. We have a tool that will basically go out and look for lookalike domains and determine which of those are registered and are available to be used. We also have tools for looking at spoofing, things that could spoof your email, or settings for spoofing. There's tools for doing that. We can also look at your DNS. There's tools like DNS Stuff and others where we can look at your DNS and make sure those settings are set up properly. Spoofing can also occur on ARP tables in switches. So usually that requires physical access to a switch to be able to do things like that. But spoofing can occur in a number of different ways, and we have a number of checks for that. As you may have heard in previous months, and certainly on all of our webinars, we're certainly talking about our capabilities to watch and evaluate about 22 different metrics. Some of the ones that are really important that we're looking at are foreign mailbox logins. We're seeing a lot of that, especially from Kenya, to mail systems, and then also forwarding. Obviously, mailbox forwarding is something legitimate that can occur, but when it's occurring out to the Gmails and so forth of the world, you want to know that it was your user that's doing that and not some foreign entity or someone looking to get your email messages onto a system that they control. So all of these things are partly identifying the check. But we look at the total solution for this really as a three-pronged process. One is security awareness. The average organization has about 27% of phishing emails are effectively opened. That's just kind of generically across organizations of all sizes. Your goal is to continually train them, provide them content and awareness with regards to what it is they're clicking on. If they do click on things, to provide them real-time feedback on that, and to kind of get your users to be down the 1-2%. We offer that service $5 per user per month as a turnkey offering, inclusive of all the software. Secondly, is a process thing. We think that you should have good process. You should be looking at your logs. You should be looking for foreign logins. You should be looking for mailbox forwarding and a number of other things. And if in some of the settings that are listed there, role assignments, who's logged in as admin and got that capability. So all of these things should be evaluated. They should be looked at on a weekly basis, if not more often. We do that service for $200 per month. And last but not least, there's some technology that can help here. If you're not aware, Microsoft has some technology as well as others such as Mimecast and so forth. Microsoft's technology is called Advanced Threat Protection, or ATP. It has a number of capabilities for protecting attachments and links, but in addition, it also helps stop the impersonation at a domain or at a user level. We can cover that in more detail as to how that helps, but people, process, and technology are ultimately the answers for solving some of those challenges. All right, the third story, and certainly if you have any questions, come off mute and we can ask and try to take those as we go, or if you want to save it for the end, that's fine too. The third is around phone giants as identity providers. The big four, if you will, T-Mobile, Sprint, AT&T, and Verizon, generally have agreed that they want to be in the identity business. There's general agreement in the industry, and hopefully in your minds, that basically login and password security is horrendous. It's a horrendous way to do it. The average user, the average mobile user has 92 passwords. The average, the normal breach that occurs in 82% of them, breaches were due to weak or leaked credentials. So those are horrendous stats, right? You can't manage that many mobile passwords and be good at it. And evidence shows that basically credentials are a part of most leaks that occur. So the good news is we need MFA. All right, there's general agreement we need MFA. Now there's definitely discrepancy as to how to make MFA a positive thing. The mobile providers have got an idea, and in fact a web application or an application that's going to be on your phones called Verify. They're hoping to launch this. They're hoping to bake this actually into the code of all phones produced in, let's say the next year. Right now this project is in its infancy. What their hope is to do is to use the phone for a second factor of authentication. And in fact, they're going to switch from being a second factor, as it is sort of today, to hopefully being a primary factor. And the multi-factor ID that they would be promoting would be not only something about your SIM card details, which we'll talk about in a moment, but other things like how long as your account have you been an account holder, if you're just opening up a quick phone and haven't had the account for a long time, that's a little higher level risk and things of that nature. So they're hoping to combine those 5 elements there into being your multi-factor authentication. Now, this flies a little bit in the face. So multi-factor, I think we can all agree, would be a great thing to get there. It's the best way to assure, independent of your weak password, don't worry, multi-factor is the, who you are, or your fingerprint, or your retinal scan, and it's a much better authentication means than simply login and password. That said, I want us to keep in mind last month, for those that might have been on the phone, I spoke of SIM swaps, right? SIM swaps were becoming a pretty prolific issue. We won't rehash the story, but I personally went through a SIM swap where an AT&T account rep out in California at a Best Buy had apparently been convinced that my phone had been stolen and provided the credentials to someone who, again, there are 2 goals typically when they have your SIM. One is they now are able to authenticate as your MFA, so your phone is suddenly in their hands for that time period that it's been swapped, and you haven't notified AT&T. Fortunately, that wasn't the case, but that would have allowed them, authentication had they known our login and password into various systems. And secondly, it's to provide a SIM into a new phone so that your phone, a phone with a SIM card is certainly a lot more expensive on the street. So a stolen phone with a good SIM commands more price. And fortunately, that was what they were trying to go after with mine. But within 24 hours, I was back to whole and things were good. But that's kind of what SIM swaps do, and they kind of fly in the face of trusting these phone providers to be your identity provider, and it's part of the uphill battle for those. So we kind of look forward to our solution, which really is leveraging Microsoft's MFA product, which comes in 2 flavors. So in the upper left-hand corner, we can choose between the Enterprise Mobility Suite flavor of MFA or the MFA that's included with Office 365. So we help you kind of walk through those choices, or if you have third-party. There's a number of conditions you may want to consider as to when you want to turn on MFA. Maybe it's only for certain applications or locations, or for certain people, or when they're off network, or maybe it's after hours, things of that. So conditions are certainly part of it. You want to make sure that they have a good experience, right? Independent of what browser they're using, what devices they're using, what operating system, you want to make sure that the MFA is working well for the users. Otherwise, it's going to look like something that was IT-driven and being pushed down without input from the end users. And last, obviously, having a goal. So our proof of concept in this area is a $10,000 turnkey offering to make sure that 10 users or 25 users are set up with MFA, have a good experience, you've got your conditional access, trusted IP ranges, and so forth, and get that working. To kind of validate this method, actually Microsoft just announced last week at the Inspire conference that they are going to be using the Microsoft Authenticator app, which was part of our proof of concept back here. We use the Microsoft Identifier app as one of the ways to use your multi-factor. They're going to be using that app to provide passwordless logins to all applications, which currently is about 3,500 applications, via Azure AD. So this could mean that your Google, your Concur, your apps of the day, Workday, Box, Dropbox, all of those applications can be passwordless with Microsoft Authenticator very soon. That was just announced last week. So we're looking forward to that, and the whole idea of MFA, I think, is here to stay. All right, which brings us to story number 4, which usually is often around patching, and certainly this month again there were a number of critical patches that came out from Microsoft as well as Adobe, but we're not going to dive in deep on those, and instead we're going to just kind of look at the task you have before you. Look at this list, okay? And when most people think of patching, they probably think of their servers, right? And that's number 2 in my list here. Certainly, you're also thinking of workstations, maybe at number 5 down there. there are 12 systems here for which you're responsible for patching, with various life cycles as to when the patches come out. Sometimes they're labeled as firmware updates or software updates. So I just called it updates in general, but this is what you have to do. Are you responsible today, and are you updating Java on your browsers? Are you disabling Flash? Are you mandating that only certain browser versions are at a version level? Are you updating your mobile software? Or are you just letting users do that? Do you have certain minimums that they have to be at? After all, there's a number of security patches within there too. Are you updating your switches either on a monthly or quarterly basis and looking for new switch firmware that may be available, fixing many of the security issues that are out there? Your phones, your conferencing system. So I guess I just kind of point out to you that patching and updating is a very broad process. There's a lot to do, and you could commit a lot of cycles to it. That was kind of one idea on it. The second idea on it is that stuff goes end of life. And undoubtedly, we talked about the Windows 7 going end of life in about 14 months. But look at some other notables that are over on the right-hand side. Could start from the bottom up. Windows 10. Windows 10 version 1703 is going end of life in 2 weeks. And that's the fourth iteration of Windows 10, and it's going end of life, meaning no more patches are coming out for that system. So there's ways, and we have a blog on how to look for those versions of Windows 10 within your environment that might be predate current, if you will, but that's a very short life cycle for the Windows 10 items that are out there. SQL 2008, I won't read you the list, but those are the ones that have either gone end of life or will be going end of life shortly. Cisco ASA 5510 was a very popular firewall. If you still have it, it's done next week. Okay? No more updates for that. So the end of life situation, what happens when you have no more patches to implement, right? Hopefully you've done some pre-planning to think through what those replacements will be. If you haven't, or are kind of tired of the rat race, if you will, of trying to keep up with patches, this is what we do. We're responsible for about 4,000 systems at this time for patching, whether they be switches, firewalls, workstations, servers. We're not doing a lot of phones at this point, but we've got a lot of awkward wireless access points, backup systems. We have significant responsibility in those spaces. We're economical, I guess, about the way we do it because we use tools and we kind of go cross-customer, if you will, and apply these tools to be able to patch hundreds of workstations or dozens of servers at a particular account on a particular evening. We do this for patching for 5 servers, as an example, is $50 a month. Okay. Sometimes it makes sense to offload. Certainly want to let you know that we have the capability to be your partner in that if you desire to outsource it. A couple other notables with the time we have remaining here, and then we'll leave some time for questions. One is I just want to point out that because of the leak of our fine credit agency, Equifax, a year ago, the government decided, hey, you know what, it's not enough that people get free credit reports, which happened after a hack, I don't know, maybe 8 years ago. Now we want to offer the capability for them to get free credit freezes from the big 3 providers, Experian, Equifax, and I can't remember the third at this point. But all 3 of them offer capability to do free credit freezes as well as unfreezes. This is something we've mentioned in previous months where credit freezes are a very highly suggested thing to do personally to protect identities which notably have been stolen. The starting point for all of this discussion is at identitytheft.gov, and there are links, legitimate links, from there into sites that can help you freeze your credit if so desired. Personal note, I've had my credit frozen for several years due to some of the leaks and seeing that my account was indeed out there, as well as someone trying to file taxes on using our accounts. So credit freeze has assisted. I also want to point out the FBI put out a public service announcement last week, so this is very timely. Effectively, they're seeing a lot of what they call payroll diversion, where they're trying to do phishing emails, and the phishing emails have occurred previously, so we're kind of late for the phishing emails, but let's say that they've hijacked some credentials. They're leveraging those credentials to go into payroll systems and modify where checks are being sent, and then also putting scripted any notifications that are occurring to the account that, hey, a change has been made as to where payroll is going. They're hiding those notifications. So this is very similar to business email compromise, but this is focused specifically on payroll. I want to make sure you are aware of that, as that would be bad if suddenly we didn't have money going into our direct deposits going into our account, but into someone else's. The suggested solutions for this from the FBI, there are 9. 4 of them we've chatted about in previous months, but multi-factor authentication, which we just chatted about. Health check and looking at settings would be an answer for it. Incident response plan, again, something that we've assisted customers with extensively. And then our security awareness offering. They want to make sure that customers are up to date about this scam as well as others. Last but not least, there's been a number of compliance items in the news. Hopefully you've seen that GDPR has been in effect for a while. We're starting to see organizations really starting to, while they're a little late, try to catch up and put GDPR into effect. California has a privacy law that's going into effect in 14 months, and it effectively is GDPR if you're trying to do business with any organization in the state of California. So that will be probably more impactful potentially than GDPR. And also New York Department of Financial Services cybersecurity law, a little bit obscure, as likely you're not a bank operating in New York. However, a lot of people are looking, a lot of financial institutions are looking at this regulation as the kind of the yardstick for effective cybersecurity measures. So you may want to look to this if you're financially regulated as to what you'll be required to do. This went into effect in August 2017, and a lot of states are evaluating it for themselves too. I won't touch too much on blogs, but we do try to blog each week 2 or 3 times, put up videos or short articles so that you can learn more about things occurring in the cybersecurity industry, including our business email compromise video that you see upper left there. That's at our peters.com blog.